Welcome back. Have the stories about professional football players and brain damage made you rethink whether your kids should play? The high school football season is about to begin across the Suncoast, but in just the last few months we have seen a number of NFL players in their prime, some just starting their pro careers, leave the game, not because they're already showing signs of CTE, but because they don't want to face the risk. And joining us for more is Henry Lawrence, a three-time Super Bowl champion with the Oakland Raiders, Pete Dombrowski, the City of Venice's Director of Athletics, and Dr. Dean Sutherland, a neurologist at Sarasota Memorial Hospital. Henry, when you have seen these stories, what goes through your mind? You know, you spent a long time in the NFL. Do you have any concerns about yourself?
I do. Most of the guys do, and along the way, you know, as the more you find out about some of the things that's happening with guys, the more you understand that you're not immune to it. And I've learned that over the last few years on things that have occurred, that's been happening, and I realized that none of us are immune except certain players that are not doing any real serious contact. But as a lineman playing, I basically had made contact every play. And even not being a lineman on special teams, I can remember, now looking back at it, there were several concussions involved, but back then, you know, it was one of these things, you gotta be a man, and you get a little shaked up, and what they'll do is break the smelling sauce and put it, and you get back and say, okay, how many fingers? You say 3, okay, he's ready. So it wasn't taken that serious, but I've also learned that a lot of information was already known, it just was not revealed to players and other people that were involved. Yes, I am concerned, and all of the guys are.
Doctor, these are stories that really have emerged, and we often hear, and that study that 99% of the players examined after they passed away showed signs of this. Really, you can understand why a lot of players who are just entering the NFL or been in the league a few years are leaving early.
Absolutely, Al. You know, we should mention that the study that was done, there were 200 players that were looked at. Now, those were brains that were taken from players whose family had been concerned about their behavior and then donated their bodies to science, you know, to see what was going on with them. So it was kind of a select group. It wasn't all players, but still 99% of those NFL players having damage, and that is concerning.
You know, there was one case involving a young man who was in his 20s, played for the NFL, and died tragically of causes unrelated to playing in the NFL. But when they studied his brain, they found also signs of CTE. That's a pro player who was in his 20s.
That's right. And we actually, in this study, there was one high school player, I think, who had CTE signs as an adult. And then there was a lot of college players that were in there also, and about 75% of those brains showed CTE.
Right, and I want to get into more of that in our next segment, but Pete, in Venice, what's been the impact of this? I mean, we saw the practice helmets there, but are you seeing fewer kids coming out for high school football?
No, not at this time. I think most of it is having the ability to purchase the equipment that you can get to keep a child safe. And once those parents know that we're getting the best equipment we can to avoid any injury, shoulder pads, helmets, whatever we need to get, I haven't seen. We have about 150 student athletes playing football right now, and we're lucky that Coach Peacock had found those padded helmets. That we have good coaches to teach good technique. I think that's very important, teaching the fundamentals and good technique to try to avoid this. Last year we had, I think, 2 concussions out of the freshman, JV, and varsity level for football players.
Right, and I want to get more into those practice helmets in just a moment, but we have to take a bit of a break here, and we'll have more on head injuries in high school football right after we check our first alert weather, so stay with us. Welcome back. We are just a week away from the start of the high school football season, but there's increasing concern about the long-term impact of playing football, highlighted by the sudden retirements of several NFL players in their prime. And joining us for more is Henry Lawrence, a 3-time Super Bowl champion with the Oakland Raiders, Pete Dombrowski, the City of Venice's Director of Athletics, and Dr. Dean Sutherland, a neurologist at Sarasota Memorial Hospital. Henry, What do you make of those sudden retirements of players just coming into the NFL and then retiring, saying that they don't want to put themselves at risk?
That's a tough question to answer, because these guys are making decisions. These are personal decisions that they're making. The other part of it is that, and it could be one of being very smart, because of the fact that many of these players coming in now, they're making so much money, and if they're getting so much more assistance with handling and managing it and directing and redirecting it, that they don't have to play a long time to become financially secure. And I think, I would assume that that is what many of them are doing. And it would make sense, knowing what is happening with that.
You know, some of the studies that we see are out there are just incredible. We talked about one of them. Out of 202 deceased football players, former professional football players, many of them showed signs of CTE, but the studies also show that 110 out of 111 NFL players showed CTE, but they also found 3 of the 14 high school football players and 48 of the 53 college players also showed early signs of CTE. That's incredible.
That's right. It's shocking. It's kind of scary. But also, you have to remember, as we said, that this study was done on people who were not doing well and they died and their families were concerned. So one of the estimates is that what if you were to, say, lower it from 99% down to 10%? That's still a significant number of high school and college and football players in the NFL who are going to wind up being at risk for CTE. So I think that it is something that we have to be concerned about. You have to protect your body, and the question is, are you going to pull your kids out of...
We showed in Adam's story, and Pete talked about a little bit, the protective coverings that they're using in Venice to basically deflect the impact in practice. Number one, do you think that's effective? And number two, they're using it in the practice but not in the games.
I think it's a great idea. There's no doubt they're going to get extra protection from having that extra protection in practice and not in the games. I think it's very helpful. But as the trainer was saying earlier on the earlier segment, one of the things we know does cause also concussions is just impact on the body. And anytime the brain gets sloshed around because of any sort of rotational injury, that can also cause a concussion and brain injury.
So Pete, how are you teaching young football players differently now than you used to in terms of ways to avoid that head-to-head contact?
I think we're getting better coaches, more knowledgeable coaches who have played college, NFL. Larry Shannon, who's with us, was with the Oakland Raiders and the Miami Dolphins, and they're getting the understanding. Plus, we get a lot from the FHSAA on certain things we can and cannot do. But I think having experienced coaches and teaching the correct fundamentals, keeping your head up, not just piling in like we did in the old days, right? That's, I think, very important part.
Do you get more questions from parents?
Not really, no. I mean, they understand that when there's a concussion, he's removed from the field, he's got to see a doctor, he has to go through a certain amount of time before he's returned to the field. The whole thing is there, when a parent gives you their child, you have to protect him at all costs. It becomes like your child, so you're going to do what you have to do.
I don't know if there's any way to basically come up with statistics for this, but doctor, you have a couple of sons. You really dissuaded them from playing football.
That's right.
Same here. I'm wondering how many parents out there are doing the same.
I don't know what the numbers are. As Henry was saying, we've known for quite some time that there were problems probably with repeated head trauma in football in particular causing CTE, but just the data wasn't really known and the studies weren't out there. But this study that just came out in July is such an eye-opener that I think that people are probably going to rethink this. I'm a former football player myself and from high school, but as you said, I knew about the data from CTE and I was concerned about my own sons.
So Henry, I don't know if you have any sons yourself.
Yes.
But if you do, would you allow them to play football?
I do, and my oldest son, I allowed him, he played flag, and then he started playing basketball, put him in basketball camps, and he actually ended up becoming Mr. Florida basketball. My other two sons, they just graduated from college, twins. They didn't play. I didn't push them to play either. I've always been I've always advertised, and when I talk to schools and parents that I believe that parents should convince their kids, insist that they play flag football as long as there's a flag football opportunity. But it has gotten pretty intense, and sometimes the parents can be the problem because they want their kid to play and they want them to go to the NFL. But I've always felt, and I've known for a fact, that at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, kids are more vulnerable than anybody. Their brains are forming, their joints are forming, their growth plates. So there are many things that can happen, and it do happen. But no one has paid attention to that for a long time. Now they are. All of those things, I think, play a part.
There's so much discussion about how this issue is threatening the NFL. Henry, from your perspective, how likely is it that they are going to make changes to the game to make these kinds of head-to-head impacts and other ways you get concussions less likely?
Well, I would say to them, good luck. I mean, they have made some progress, but I really, football is a contact sport. And basically, I don't feel that you can play the game without having contact. And there are some people that are intensely intense. And I feel that I was one of those people. And there's no way I can go and I'm gonna hit the guy and I'm gonna pull up. I can foresee guys actually having additional injuries, especially defensive players. If you're going in and you get to a point where you're finna make a hit, and the rule is saying you got to not allow your head to hit that player, and you consciously move your head, guy could break his neck. I mean, so there's so many things that can happen on both sides. I don't know how you can fix that, but football is a contact sport.
Yeah, and Pete, the discussion has been that you are teaching kids how to tackle and play differently now than in Henry's time, but Henry makes a good point. If you're avoiding head-to-head contact, you're opening up those kids for different kinds of injuries.
He's right, and also today's athletes are a little faster. Not taking anything away from Henry.
Excuse me?
they're a little faster, a little stronger. I mean, rules have been implemented, protecting quarterbacks, certain hits that you can't make. So yeah, it's just. But the game of football is just part of America. I mean, everywhere we look at it, people love it. They pack stadiums to see it. It brings towns together, communities together. It makes a school what a school is, and I just don't see it changing. I mean, I agree with him with younger kids being 6 years old. Are they ready for tackle? No. My son waited till he was in about 6th grade before he drove me nuts and he played.
Right.
But I think if it's flag football tackle, as long as the child's participating at an early age and being active, that's
right.
Perfect.
And Doctor, there was a major motion picture last year about this, about the physician that really kind of brought this to the surface. Do you think football can ever be made safer, that the issue that we're having with CTE is not going to, if not go away, lessen?
I think it already has been made safer from some of the rules that are implemented about head-to-head contact and excessive force with contacts. And so I do think that's already been an impact. I think in the future we might know more about how many concussions you should be allowed to have before you should be taken out for a season, say, or those sort of things. I think we already have some data that says if you have 3 concussions or more, you're much more likely to get CTE and cognitive deficits later on in your life.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we'll have final thoughts from our guests, so stay with us. High school football and head injuries are our guests joining us right now for final thoughts. So, Doctor, for the parents who are watching this conversation right now, who don't know what to do, what would you tell them?
I would say probably try to educate yourself. Find out what the statistics are and what the studies show. Maybe even talk to your doctor. Go talk to your physician about what the risks are. Talk to your high school athletic director and your trainers and other athletes about what the risks are. There is some risk there. I don't think people should just willy-nilly pull their kids out of high school sports, but you should be educated on it.
Pete, what is coming down the pike in terms of high school football? You talked about the protective pads, the training to tackle differently. What else are you folks talking about implementing that may even lessen the danger here?
Just caution, having doctors on our sideline for when there is an injury, protecting that child at all times. And with technology, we don't know what's coming down the road. You never thought you'd see these plastic helmets that we use in practice today. The cost is up there, hopefully, because it's a new technique, that the price will come down where other high schools can't afford it. But we're always looking for ways to protect those student athletes, to keep them safe, and to continue to play the game of football on Friday nights.
And Henry, in terms of retired NFL players like yourself, you see a lot of what your peers have been going through. Do you folks often talk about this? I would imagine there's a lot of uncertainty in your life.
There is. Well, yes, we do. We have I go up to Tampa to the Players Association meeting we have up there. It started a rate of alumni, and they bring them. We have to go out to camp at the end of the month, July, and this was this last weekend of July. And we had actually an informative meeting from the Players Trust, the NHL, the Legends, and Player Care. And a lot of very critical things came up. And the other part is that no one really knows the answer, but I feel that for the kids in high school and college, one thing that I do know is that it would help tremendously if these schools start having chiropractors and kinesiologists, and preferably one that is a chiropractor also and a kinesiologist on the sideline, as well as orthopedics. I know they frown on it, but it did wonders for me, and it actually saved my career. But
right.
It can do some great things that prevent the injury from getting worse, because they can fix a lot of things right then.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Gentlemen, thank you. The job market is on the rise on the Suncoast. Unemployment in the nation is at a 16-year low, with businesses booming in South County as well. Companies are hiring, but are they paying enough to live on? Mark says this is exactly what President Trump said would happen if he was elected. Guess what? It's happening. Michael says this must have included the construction companies from other states, staffed by workers from another country, making downtown great again. Well, if you'd like to join the conversation on tonight's topic, just visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/news@7. And FYI, you can watch past discussions. They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. We want to thank all our guests for being here tonight. Henry Lawrence is a 3-time Super Bowl champion with the Oakland Raiders. I love saying that. Pete Dombrowski is the City of Venice's athletic director, and Dr. Dean Sutherland is a neurologist at Sarasota Memorial Hospital. I also like saying that.